Hello and welcome to Work-Life Matters. I'm Siv Ngesi, your host, and I'm excited to be bringing you candid stories, practical strategies, and awesome insights as we chat to a range of cross-section professionals, entrepreneurs, and startups, and more to find out about how their work life can matter to you. Today, I'm speaking to Gareth Leck and Rael Levitt, both of whom are comeback kids. I hope you enjoy. All right, I'm chatting to Rael Levitt, founder and CEO of InnoSpace. How are you doing, Rael?
Yeah, how's it going?
Let's talk about your book. I've read a lot about you, and I'm really excited to chat about this book and your comeback story.
Yeah, so the book's called It Takes a Tsunami. I have a copy right sitting next to me over there. And in essence, the story really is a story of tenacity and overcoming disaster and having the ability to navigate through the challenges. And where the name comes from, firstly, I was in the real tsunami in the 2004 Boxing Day event in Southeast Asia in Thailand.
What? That's
And
crazy.
yeah, so that the book takes the name, and I start off the book talking about that, but then I talk about a business tsunami which I had in 2012, and it's really like the lessons learned from dealing with adversity and then recovery. And really, in essence, the book gets its name from because it takes a tsunami, or it takes difficulty, if you paraphrase it, to discover what you're made of, and it takes difficulty to put you on the right path, and it takes difficulty to really have a deep understanding of yourself. And that's really, in essence, the book. It is a memoir, so it does tell my story, which takes place in Cape Town, in the property market.
So, when that business tsunami happened, did you go right back and start a business straight afterwards, or did you need time to relax? How was your mental health during the process?
Yeah, no, in fact, when I start the book, I write the story. I said, look, it took me 10 years to write this book. So I wish I could say that I bounced back immediately. It certainly wasn't the case. I think anybody who's been through any form of trauma knows that it does take time, and it certainly didn't. I wrote the book 10 years after the event, but in essence, it took me about sort of 5 years to find my feet, which most people go, wow, that's crazy. 5 years is a very long time. But I suppose in the life cycle of a business, it isn't. From the closing of Auction Alliance, which was the company which I had founded as a 20-year-old, to the founding of InnoSpace, it was a 5-year journey. And when you ask me about how was my mental health, for a while it wasn't good at all. I went through very bad moments. In the beginning, I felt sorry for myself, which is probably the worst thing. And I got into sort of a phase where I felt quite immobilized. And then I decided to get on a course of action. And the book talks about these steps which I took. Obviously, it talks about many other things, but in the sort of post-traumatic event and the sort of coming back, I really put together a game plan, and which I follow the steps. And yeah, a few years later, I restarted InnoSpace, and today InnoSpace is a 3 billion rand company. Auction Alliance was a 300 million rand company. So it's quite ironic that today the company is 10 times larger than the previous one. And yeah, it was one hell of a journey.
So, your second tsunami, the business tsunami, once again, have you taken moments of accountability to say what kind of mistakes you've made in the process and how you rectify them in the second business?
Yeah, there's no question, like, all ability to change comes with the ability to look within and say, what did I do wrong? Now, often I'm always nervous of saying, what did I do wrong? Because that can become a bit self-flagellating. In other words, we just, we become very self-critical. But I do think we need to take accountability for the things which we do wrong and be real about it, and really say, look, I fucked up here and I messed up there and I had a problem here, and to say, okay, but it's not about that accountability only. It's about to say, what did I learn from it? What were my learnings? And I think that's a sign of many successful people, which I learned, is to say, look, I take accountability for my mistakes, but more importantly, what are the lessons from the mistakes? And and at the end of the day, that again, the book tells the story. It says, the lessons and it's at the bottom of the book, it says, knocked down but not gone, lessons in catastrophe and tenacity. And those lessons are the most critical ones. Now, to answer the second part of the question in the new business, obviously, we all learn from our mistakes. And as we learn and grow as human beings, and failure is just the greatest teacher. You can't get a better teacher than failure. When things are going well, we don't actually learn because, why learn? Everybody's looking at us and saying, you're doing well. We ourselves feel we're doing well, but excuse me, but the failure and the catastrophe and the tenacity, those are your greatest learning. So when I took it into the new business, obviously there were many learnings which I had, and I remind myself of them every day, because all of a sudden you get back onto the success train and then we forget about all the difficult times. So there are learnings, and of course, what happens, we make new mistakes which we never made before, but certainly there are many learnings which I've had from the first one, which I apply and I deal with daily.
So it's quite easy when you're in business to look at one business that's doing 10 times better than the other business. But is there anything from your last business that you actually miss?
Oh yeah, no, there's plenty. I love the former business. It was a 20-year love affair. It was a business which I'd nurtured like a child. So I started it when I was at UCT in the Leslie canteen. It grew to become one of the largest auctioneers probably definitely the largest auctioneer in South Africa. In fact, even globally, it was considered quite a large business. So I did miss it. I missed the cut and thrust of it, the energy. I missed the people in that business. But I've never been a person who lives too much in looking at life in the rearview mirror. I think that can be quite dangerous. I think so. I move on, and I've recreated another exciting company with many of the same ethos, by the way, the same dynamic grouping. We all human beings, we tend to repeat patterns now, which is difficult because often we can repeat unsuccessful patterns, but we also repeat success patterns. So in many ways, in a space, it does have a little bit of the culture and ethos of the last business.
How important was your family and your support structure in you coming back and creating the second company?
Yeah, it's quite interesting. And when the sort of the auction line story erupted, and it really was a media story more than anything else. It was a huge trial by media. Initially, I sort of took that sort of stiff upper lip, maybe more generational of my generation, and I used to tell everybody, it's fine. And my family would ask me how things are going, and I said, oh, don't worry about it, it's all fine. But it wasn't fine, and I wasn't feeling fine. And it took me actually a while to become more real about it. And I think that I certainly learned that both family and friends are critical in terms of dealing with difficult situations. Even on a smaller basis, during yesterday, for example, I had a bit of a rough day. Nothing dramatic at all, but I just spoke to a friend of mine and we had a bit of a laugh and a chat on the phone, and that just sort of lowered my levels of tension and anxiety. So I think that family, a support structure. Now, I come from quite a large family, so I have quite a good support structure. But support structure not only in family, it's in friends, it's in social activities, and so I did find that very important.
So in other words, if you're listening at home, you just heard a man with a 3 billion rand company can have a bad day.
Oh, I can definitely have a bad day. It's yes. I'm sure people who've got 100 billion rand companies have bad days. And I always watch. At the end of the day, I always actually think that CEOs are just people as well, and they also take. They also get under pressure and have bad days and want to shout and scream and kick the dog.
So so you talk about the tsunami, the real one that happened. That was quite a traumatic experience. Tell me about the similarities between the two tsunamis you dealt with, because for me, that's what the book's about. One, hundreds of thousands of people died. One, you lost what you built over 20 years. What are the similarities between the two tsunamis?
Yeah, well, I think the real similarity is that both of them came as a huge surprise. It was a bolt out of the blue. 1 minute I was running on the beach in Thailand, looking over the Andaman Sea, thinking that it was paradise, and the next minute there was death, mayhem, and destruction around me. It was completely out of the blue. The same was with my company. It was like one day it was absolutely perfect, and then it was completely a bolt out of the blue. something which was completely I wasn't preparing for it at all, which I think is not uncommon, because many catastrophes and many difficult things do not happen over slowly. They suddenly happen out of the blue. I mean, if you take COVID, for example, I mean, if you'd asked any of us in sort of the 1st of February 2020, which I mean is not that long ago, would we be living in this like dystopian state? All of us would go, no ways. I mean, that's not possible. I mean, probably like most of us, I remember going through the waterfront with little clothes, and I think like, what happened? I mean, it was suddenly a bolt out of the blue. And I think that's one of the themes of the book, is that life is full of surprises. And I think the most surprising thing about life and business is that we think that, they always say, like, the most surprising thing about surprises is we think that there are going to be no surprises. And I think really it's dealing with that sudden like shock of a huge catastrophe where one wasn't prepared, and then saying, okay, right, how do I navigate out of those issues? So, I think that I think to me, the surprise and the destruction and then the sort of rehabilitation is the common theme between the two tsunamis. That being said, truth be told, I actually found the second tsunami far more harrowing and went on for far longer than the first one. The first one was an event I lost a very good friend of mine and his girlfriend were both killed. I was the last one to see them alive. And, that's a very harrowing in circumstances. But the next tsunami lingered on for many, many years. And so, in essence, the first one actually gave me the tools to better navigate the second one, which was more taxing on me.
So you've had 2 tsunamis in your life. Do you have any advice for people in how to be able to manage the particular trauma or the experience that happened, and how to be able to manage it? Have you had any lessons in those particular tsunamis?
Yes. In fact, in this book, and I'm not trying to push the book.
Don't worry. Buy the book. Buy the book, everyone. Buy the book.
It's all for charity, by the way. So 100% of the book proceeds go to charity, and it is available on audio. But I actually write at the back, I don't know if you can see that. It says lessons from a tsunami, 18 step tips to survive a crisis. So I actually go into this. Initially, when I wrote the book, I didn't, but a lot of people said to me, look, asked me the same question. And so I'll give you a couple of the little sort of meteor ones, which I think are good. The first one I write is like, I write in the book, I said, calm the fuck down. And if you can't, pretend to. So I think that in any crisis we start panicking, and there is a psychological issue actually if you just breathe deep and you pretend to be calm, that you can be calm, because when we get into a panic, we make very poor decisions. And I think that was a great lesson, which I learned, and almost fake it till you make it. And the next one is to focus on what's important, because there's always a lot of noise around bad events, and really to focus on and say, right, let me just say what's the most critical things that I need to do. A couple of other pieces, and just stop me when I'm going on for too long, but it's like, don't make any long-term decisions. Many people make long-term decisions with instant crisis. I mean, even when you look at the COVID, which was a crisis as well, many people start making these long-term decisions. Many people have a bad day in South Africa, and then they go and they say, okay, look, I'm making a long-term decision. And I think you just really need to take it one step at a time. I do talk about things like family, which you raised earlier on. I also talk about exercise. I talk about finding somebody to bounce things off, and whether it's a therapist or whether it's a life coach, because it's always good to have like a third party who's not caught up in it. And be careful of saviors. People, often you think, you've got friends who are giving you advice, but saviors come into your life because for different reasons. Sometimes they got their own shit on their plate, or sometimes they're not neutral, and so one must be cautious in who you talk to. And then I talk about reestablishing your routine, because a lot of people get out of there. I mean, even if you looked at in the COVID period, people got out of their routines. People who were exercising stopped exercising. People who were had a certain pattern of life. So try and reestablish your routine, and remember, probably the most important message, that no matter how bad things are, that, as they say here in Cape Town, alles sal regkom, which means things do come right in the end. Often it does take time. And when you're in the midst of a very difficult situation, be it business or personal, we almost think it will never end, but it does end, and it can have a happy outcome, because we make it have a happy outcome.
Well, Rael, thank you so much, and I'm so happy for you that you survived 2 tsunamis. Some people wouldn't even survive half a tsunami. In Cape Town, it's currently raining, and people are struggling to survive just some Cape Town rain. I look forward to reading your book, actually audio book. I've got a flight next week, and I look forward to chatting to you once again. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, great. Thanks, guys. Thanks a lot.
Have a good one.
Yes.
After that episode, it feels like I've just watched a Rocky or a Creed film. Never give up, keep on fighting. You never know what will happen. Check you on the next episode of Work-Life Matters.